History is full of turning points, moments where one decision changes everything. May 1940 was one of those moments. As Nazi Germany's Blitzkrieg was swallowing Europe whole, the British Army was trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk. And in the secret chambers of the British War Cabinet, a terrifying question was being asked. Should we fight on, or should we make peace with a monster? We all know which path they took. Winston Churchill's defiance is the stuff of legend. But what if they'd chosen the other path? What if a worn-out Britain, staring down the barrel of annihilation, had asked for peace? This isn't the story of what happened. It's a chilling look at what almost did. On the edge. To really get how close Britain came to this, you have to feel the pure desperation of late May 1940. The phony war was a distant memory. In just a few weeks, Hitler's war machine had steamrolled Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium and Luxembourg. France, which was supposed to have the best army in Europe, was collapsing. The British Expeditionary Force, the heart of Britain's army, was in a frantic retreat to Dunkirk, leaving most of its heavy gear behind. The situation was, to put it mildly, a catastrophe. Back in the War Cabinet in London, things were just as grim. Neville Chamberlain, the guy who promised peace for our time only to see it blow up in his face, had just resigned. His replacement was the hot-headed and unpredictable Winston Churchill. To many people back then, Churchill wasn't a hero. He was a political outcast, a warmonger with terrible judgment. He was Prime Minister, but his grip on power was shaky at best. And his main political rival was sitting right across the table, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Halifax. Halifax was a calm, respected aristocrat, and frankly, he was the guy most of the establishment wanted as Prime Minister. He looked at the map, read the disaster reports from France, and came to what he thought was the only logical conclusion. Fighting on meant risking the complete destruction of Britain and its empire. He felt it was the government's duty to at least see if a peace deal was possible, to save whatever they could from the fire. Over 9 incredibly tense meetings, he argued that Britain should use the still neutral Italian dictator, Mussolini, as a middleman to find out what kind of terms Hitler might offer. Halifax wasn't a coward, he was a pragmatist. He figured that if they negotiated while Britain still had its powerful navy and air force, they might get a better deal than if they fought on and lost even more. Churchill's reaction was instant and angry. He knew any negotiation from a position of weakness was a trap. Any peace with Hitler, he roared, would be a slave peace, leaving Britain forever under Germany's thumb. He believed Hitler was a liar who couldn't be trusted. For 3 agonizing days, from May 26th to May 28th, the entire future hung in the balance, decided by a few men in a smoke-filled room. In our world, Churchill won the argument by making a brilliant political move and appealing to a larger group of ministers. But in this other world, the story goes very differently. The unthinkable deal. In this alternate timeline, the pressure on Churchill gets to be too much. Lord Halifax threatens to resign, which could have easily brought down Churchill's brand new government. Chamberlain, who still had a lot of influence, sides with Halifax at first, hoping a deal could prevent total ruin. Reluctantly, Churchill gives in. A message goes out to Rome. Britain is ready to talk. So, what would Hitler's terms have been? He always had this weird, twisted respect for the British Empire. His main goal wasn't to destroy Britain, but to get a free hand to do whatever he wanted in Europe. Based on what we know, we can piece together the chilling details of a hypothetical Treaty of Brussels. First, Germany would demand that Britain recognise its new European order. France, Belgium and the Netherlands would stay under German control, probably as puppet states. Britain would have to accept that Germany was now the boss of the continent. Second, there'd be colonial giveaways. To thank Mussolini for playing mediator, Britain would probably have to demilitarise huge naval bases like Gibraltar and the Suez Canal, basically handing control of the Mediterranean to Italy. Germany would want its old African colonies back, like Tanganyika and Cameroon. Third, Britain's military would be gutted. There would be strict limits on the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, making sure Britain could never challenge Germany again. The most powerful navy in the world would be slowly choked. And what would Britain get in return? Hitler would have spun it as a generous offer. He'd agree to stop all attacks on Britain. No German soldiers would occupy the British Isles. The core of the empire, India, Australia, Canada, would be left alone, at least on paper. For a country staring into the abyss, Lord Halifax could have sold this as a bitter pill they just had to swallow. A humiliating peace, but peace. Churchill, unable to sign a document like that, resigns. Lord Halifax becomes Prime Minister and the treaty is signed. The guns over the English Channel fall silent. A new world order. Back in Britain, the feeling is a strange mix of relief and deep, deep shame. Families are back together and the threat of being bombed or invaded is gone, but the nation feels like it's sold its soul. The country that stood up to Napoleon just bent the knee. Britain is now basically a junior partner to Nazi Germany. With his Western Front secure, Hitler's entire strategy changes. There's no Battle of Britain to bleed the Luftwaffe dry. There's no North African campaign to pull away troops and supplies. Every bit of Germany's industrial and military power can now be pointed east. In this timeline, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, is launched earlier and with way more force. It's not just about starting a few weeks sooner, it's about the sheer number of extra troops, tanks, and planes Germany can use now that they aren't tied down fighting Britain. The Wehrmacht that hits the Soviet Union isn't the one from our history. It's an absolute juggernaut with no other enemies to worry about. And the Soviet Union? It's completely alone. In our timeline, it got tons of essential supplies from Britain and America through the Lend-Lease program. Now there are no British tanks helping to defend Moscow and no American trucks keeping the Red Army moving. Any attempt to send aid would be crushed by German U-boats and bombers. The result is a total disaster for the Soviets. Even with their massive numbers and toughness, the Red Army is shattered. It's very likely the German army takes Moscow before the winter of 1941 sets in. Stalin's government could easily collapse. Hitler gets his ultimate prize: Lebensraum, or living space, in the east. The swastika flies over the Kremlin. Meanwhile, in America, people are watching in horror, but there's not much they can do. Without Britain as an ally and an unsinkable aircraft carrier off the coast of Europe, President Roosevelt's calls to get involved in the war fall on deaf ears. The powerful isolationist movement in the US wins. Why send Americans to die for a continent that already gave up? America has no way into Europe, no base to launch a rescue from. The domino effect that peace treaty didn't save the British Empire. It just signed its death warrant. By making a deal with the Nazis, Britain loses all moral authority. Nationalist movements in India and across Africa get a huge boost. They can now point out the hypocrisy of an empire that talks about freedom but made a pact with the world's biggest tyrant. The empire, which in our world fell apart over decades, now collapses much faster and with a lot more chaos. And it's not just falling apart from the inside. Other sharks are in the water. With Britain's navy cut down by the treaty, there's nothing stopping Japan's ambitions in Asia. The attack on Pearl Harbor might not even happen. With Britain out of the picture, Japan might decide it's better to attack the Soviet Union's eastern territories with Germany, or just speed up its conquest of Southeast Asia. The European colonies there, British Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, fall like dominoes. The world of the late 1940s and 50s becomes a Cold War, but not between the US and the Soviets. It's a Cold War between a massive Nazi-dominated Eurasian empire and an isolated, fortified United States. Europe is a dark continent. The Holocaust, instead of being stopped by Allied armies, runs its full, horrific course. Resistance movements in France and Poland with no support from Britain are wiped out. Technology also goes down a different path. Without the pressure of a two-front war, German wonder weapons, jet fighters, long-range rockets could be perfected. A Nazi Germany that has beaten the Soviets would be a technological superpower like nothing the world has ever seen. There would still be a nuclear arms race, but the first atomic bomb might have been used by the Nazis to keep America in check. The world today. So what would our world actually look like today? The map is terrifyingly different. A greater German Reich controls Europe from the Atlantic all the way to the Ural Mountains. Cities like Paris, Prague, and Warsaw are just regional capitals in a giant empire, their cultures crushed. Fascism isn't a defeated ideology. It's a successful system of government. North America, maybe with Australia and New Zealand, would be a block of democracies in a permanent high-tech standoff with the Nazi Empire. The Iron Curtain wouldn't be in the middle of Europe. It would be the Atlantic Ocean. All the great struggles of our time, the fight for civil rights, decolonization, global trade, would be twisted or just wouldn't have happened. The world would be a more brutal, less free, and much more dangerous place. Things we take for granted, like the United Nations or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they just wouldn't exist. It's a grim, dystopian world, all built on one decision to appease a tyrant. The choice made in May 1940 was about more than just war or peace. It was a choice about what kind of world would be left standing. By refusing to give in, by choosing to fight on alone when it looked hopeless, Churchill and the people who stood with him didn't just save Britain. They saved the very possibility of the world we live in today. They kept a flicker of hope alive in a world that was going dark, giving freedom a place to stand and fight back from. History is made of choices, and in 1940, the choice for defiance, not surrender, really did save the world. What do you think? Is this how it would have played out? Or would the United States have found a way to enter the war anyway? Let us know your theories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip into an alternate timeline, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more videos that ask, what if?